Well, welcome everyone, and a very warm welcome to my guest today, a Mr. Parrish Collins, civil rights attorney in Albuquerque, USA. Now, I'm so grateful for the amazing and inspiring people I get to meet via this fabulous After 50 podcast and now YouTube channel. So Parrish will be sharing his story of discovering his true mission after 50, what he learned, and also some tips that he can share with us all today. But first, Parrish, maybe it's best if you start with introducing yourself, sharing maybe a little bit about who you are and why you do what you do.
Okay, I could go for a while, but so I'm an attorney in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'd done a little bit of civil rights in the past, but when Jeff Sessions was appointed by President Trump to be the Attorney General, I thought I should probably do a little bit more civil rights, because I didn't think that Jeff Sessions was going to be particularly, helpful. It was not going to be good for civil rights. So anyway, I'd done quite a bit of medical negligence type work, and so I kind of figured out that that's where I fit in, and I went to basically a legal seminar on solitary confinement. And then, I'm looking at that thinking, that's medical. And anyway, so I started looking into this basically, right after Jeff Sessions got appointed. And then, I've become kind of obsessed with it since. It's been, over 6 years now that we've been working on these cases. And it's been a long journey to get here. I got out of law school in 1989, and I went to a large corporation. I'm from Texas, so I actually went to a really big oil company.
Oh, right.
And I did oil and gas, that was the kind of work I did. And anyway, I guess I had kind of an early midlife crisis in my 20s.
That is lovely.
And then I didn't like what I was doing. I was bored. I got a little depressed, I guess. And so I was going to join the Army.
It was an escape, right? You wanted a way out.
In hindsight, it's a little silly, but I kind of always had a Churchill quote. I think it was Churchill who said there's nothing more exhilarating than being shot at and missed. Anyway, I went through all the intake stuff and the physicals and everything, and they asked me some questions about drug use, and I did a fair amount of drugs when I was in high school, and the doctor asked me if I'd ever done drugs, and I said, yeah, of course, and anyway, he said, well, which ones? And I said, well, it should be safe and say all of them, because I was thinking, I don't want to lie on this. Yeah. It's federal crime. I'm an attorney, and so anyway, that held up my entry. Then I ended up having to write a letter to the Surgeon General. I'd already turned in my notice with the oil company, and so we ended up, my wife's from Albuquerque, so we ended up here. And about 6 months later, I get a letter from the Army saying, you're good to go, you've been approved. And I just said no.
Then it had passed, right?
Well, it's just irritating, and it's a whole long story, and it's pretty humorous, but it's not really on point here. The whole thing was just kind of like, I don't think that's an organization that I would probably fit in with. So anyway, so I ended up out here. I did some other stuff. I ended up doing everything I could to avoid practicing law. I worked on a PhD. I ended up owning a nightclub, doing music promotions, and all kinds of stuff. And then I opened my own firm. I opened my first own firm in 1994, I think, somewhere around there. And anyway, by that time, I think my wife was a little frustrated with my decision making.
Yes, impulsiveness, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up splitting up, and I went back to Dallas from Albuquerque, which is where I was from. And then my wife and I got back together, and we've been married since 1987.
What a story.
36 years. So yeah, she's an absolute saint for putting up with me. I worked for a firm briefly, then I worked for the public defender for a little bit, and then I started my own firm again in 2000, I believe.
And so you're a brave man, I could say. I mean, if we want to get some tips out of all of that, you sort of basically follow your impulses or whatever strikes your fancy at the moment, but you really do give it a go, right? It's not just, oh, wouldn't it be nice if you actually go out and try all these different things?
Well, yeah, brave is a kind word. I think my wife might take issue with that part of it, but yeah, that's probably better. Anyway, and that kind of gets into the prison stuff, because I still didn't really like practicing law, but I did it because it's a good job. And my wife's my law partner, I met her in college. We went to law school together, and then we got married my first year of law school. And so she's my law partner and kind of the brains of the operation. So it was a great lifestyle. You know, we had a lot of freedom. We made decent money, but then I never really liked it much. And then I started doing this work. I feel like I feel like
really
I'm
found what it
20
was.
again. Yeah, I'm just obsessed with it. I work, 7 days a week, and I'm not complaining. I actually do it because I like doing it. You know, I'd rather be working than, gardening or sitting at home or hiking or whatever. I just really like the work, and it's become an obsession. So I went to a seminar, a legal seminar. It's called Continuing Legal Education. You have to do them, every year, like most professions. And then, I went to a solitary CLE, continuing legal education. And I'm looking at like medical, and I thought, well, I should do these because I think I could do some good. So I was thinking I might take a couple of cases, more like a civic duty thing. I never expected to kind of my primary practice, and then somehow we got a call. And then after that call, we started getting more and more calls. And it's kind of funny, New Mexico Department of Corrections, who we've sued, I don't know how many times. We filed a total of 60 of these since our first case that we filed in February of 2018, which is a lot because they're really hard, really hard cases.
But so what sort of things do we imagine? Because I mean, imagine that the audience might not know much about the correctional system, might not know much certainly about what, the US. So what sort of cases are we talking about? So it's in prisons, right?
Right. It's prison medical. I say atrocities. I've done a lot of medical malpractice work in the past, and that's hospitals and so forth. And they make mistakes, and
so we're talking about on the inmates, right? So that the inmates have a right to health and all of that. They're in prison, and the medical practice itself is not looking after them in the right way, or maybe even doing more damage.
Right. And like with medical malpractice, with private hospitals or whatever, there are mistakes made. And but who should carry that burden? The hospital with a boatload of insurance, or a family who's lost their caregiver? Or that's the way I looked at it. But with prison, it's not subtle. I mean, this is not mistakes. This is deliberate, refusal of medical care. And so we'll have cases, a lot of our cases involve infections that, had they been diagnosed, which is not hard to do, and had they been treated, which is not hard to do, they would have been fine. But what happens is they start showing symptoms, fevers, nausea, throwing up, inability to walk. Some of them get to the point where they can't get out of bed to go to the bathroom, or even to get food. They have to have inmates assist them, which is pretty dangerous. And or it could be, because you're very vulnerable in prison. And then they end up with, a lot of our cases involve infections in the spine. It's called osteomyelitis, and it gets into your spine, and a lot of them go septic. And so they end up with permanent spine damage. We have quite a few that have gotten into their hearts. It's infective endocarditis, which is a lot of times deadly. Most of our clients that have had it have passed away. And we've had, I don't know, far too many inmates that have passed away. But the ones that do survive, they can be in the hospital for weeks or months, but then they have permanent damage.
Yeah, that's right.
To their
if we're
spine.
Talking about prison being about rehabilitating people for a life afterwards, I mean, then they're handicapped through whatever consequences there are from these untreated infections. So this then suddenly became really where you saw your purpose, and you maybe in a way then understood why you were doing law in the first place.
Right. And getting to your point on rehabilitation, I know the Netherlands and a lot of the Scandinavian countries have great prisons. It's rehabilitative. There's no such thing as rehabilitation in American prisons, and not in New Mexico. They don't have programming right now. They have next to zero education, job training, or even reentry services, like, getting them prepared for when they go out. They basically get a boot in the ass and thrown out on the street, and say, it's basically, hey, we'll see you soon, because they don't have a chance. They get on the street, and our clients can't work anymore because most of them were manual laborers before, And when you get out of prison, it's not easy to get a job. Even if you were a lawyer or an investment banker, your job opportunities very well could be limited to manual labor. And you can't do that with a damaged spine or a damaged heart. So that's costing taxpayers a fortune because, first of all, once they go to the hospital, the way the contract and the Medicaid works in New Mexico, and I'm assuming it's true everywhere else across the US, if an inmate is sent out for outpatient care, like for diagnostics, for an infection, or proper antibiotic therapy for an infection, the medical contractors, which are massive out-of-state corporations, they have to pay all of that for outpatient treatment. But if that inmate goes to the hospital and stays for 24 hours and 1 second, anything over 24 hours, Medicaid pays it. So the taxpayers are
there's a game in there as well, right?
Yeah, the taxpayers are getting hit there. And then when these guys get out of prison, assuming they live, and a lot of them unfortunately don't, then they're going to be on lifetime medical care because spines, hearts, brains, missing limbs don't get better with time. And and then they can't work. So that's, those are all additional costs to taxpayers. And that's kind of the angle that I take when I talk about this, because we have some horrifying cases, and the local press will write them up, and I'm sure people read it on Sunday or whatever, and they're, that's awful. But then that's it.
Yeah.
But if they know that this is coming out of their paycheck every week, then maybe they'll pay attention.
Take some pressure to have something done. Because I mean, you're talking about costs here, etc. So who pays you and your firm for this sort of thing? How does that work?
We get paid if we win. If we get money for them, we get a part of that. And
because it must be hard for you to keep this running, right? I mean,
yeah, it's expensive, because we advance all the costs. We got 6 staff working, including me, working strictly on these cases. And then we co-counsel with some small, local firms here, and they're doing the same thing. They're working off, it's called a contingency arrangement. If you win, you get paid. If you don't win, you don't get paid.
I get you.
You lose all your time, your cost, everything else.
What do you think it runs to? I mean, I hear you talking about your colorful past and all your different attempts at finding your way, right? You just thought, okay, let's try this way. Okay, no good. Let's go this way, etc. However, this you've been doing for 6 years. So we're not talking about a passing, let's see what it's like to go and do this for a while. This really sounds to me like you've found something which you're really fighting for, right? Something which really aligns with who you are, with your values, with what you find important in life, and maybe in a way the legacy that you want to leave behind. What do you think motivates you? What is it in this exactly what you're doing now? Is it a feeling for justice? Is it the fact that, as you say, this is, you called it a Pandora box in your notes to me, that this is a huge thing. We're not just talking about, left, right, center. This is something which is happening quite systematically, and that people are getting away with it because, nobody talks about it or nobody really seems to care. Well, how would you define your motivation behind all of this?
Well, yeah, it's funny. When I was little, I read a law book. I forget what it was called, but I was all fired up about defending someone from bullies, and I actually lost some teeth, stepping in when I probably shouldn't have with really large people. And anyway, so I've always had something about bullies. And then when I went to law school, in my first summer, I worked with a civil rights professor, and I really enjoyed it. But being from Texas, I went to kind of a school that was more Wall Street driven, and those sorts of jobs. So I just figured I need to make money, and that was the worst decision. And it's not about money; it is about justice. And I really do not like bullies, and these are the worst kinds of bullies, because these are the most vulnerable people. People don't realize this, but the majority of prisoners across the country have pretty significant learning disabilities, dyslexia, autism, and I think it's definitely over 80% have mental health issues. They come from poor families, tough neighborhoods. All of our clients, 95% of them are Hispanic or Latinx, and so they have 1 foot in jail coming out of the womb. Yeah, and it's awful.
That is
And
awful.
I really like them. When I first went in, the first case I got, this guy described a pressure ulcer. And I just thought, there's no way this is true. Absolutely no way. And so I said, I'm going to go see this. And I fought like crazy to get my camera in. And that's a whole crazy story too. But so anyway, I go back to the medical unit, which they stopped letting me in because I have a case every time I left. But they let me in the medical unit. I go into an observation room. They remove the bandages, and it's awful. But I had been in the hospital for quite a while, so it was pink. So there was healing going on. But as I was leaving, and it was still huge, it was the size of a grapefruit, and still as I was leaving, one of the doctors, working for the medical contractor, handed me a picture and said, "This is what it looked like when he went to the hospital." And it's as bad as anything you can find on Google. And he told me that, I think he said the surgeon or someone at the hospital was furious and said that they could put their fist down to the spine through that pressure ulcer. And so I found, and this has been true across the board, I went in with some kind of prejudices and so forth, all the things you have about inmates and prisoners. You think they're all these bad people, but they're just people. I haven't had any inmates other than one or two maybe that have exaggerated.
Right.
If anything, they're understating it because they don't understand the medical part. They don't understand what's going on. They just need help, and they call because they need help. They need medical attention.
You're a man on a mission. I mean, that's clear. You found your goal, and I find it's just so wonderful that you found it. I think most of us are still thinking, well, we're doing this, we're doing our career, or we followed our studies, which then led to this, and which led to that. But this is the sort of age where most of us are thinking, like, but is this it? Am I doing what I'm meant to be doing here? Do I wake up every morning, eager to get into whatever it is that we're doing? And I mean, if we talk about tips here, because I mean, on one side, I feel like I want to talk more about how can we help, what about awareness raising, etc. But we'd said that this episode was also going to be about discovering your mission after 50 or whatever age it is, and some tips for the people out there who are still feeling like, gosh, I admire you sitting here, seeing how driven you are, how passionate you are about this cause that you have, which is obviously filling you with purpose. And that's what we want in life, right? We want our purpose. We want to know that we're making a difference, or at least we're trying to make a difference with every fiber of our being. So what tips would you have for our audience about getting there, getting to this part where you can actually see, or at least dare try things?
Well, I've always been like, when you say it's brave, my wife would say it's crazy and caution me. But when I decide to do something, I jump in. And if it don't work out, it don't work out. But I mean, you just gotta fight. You gotta, I guess, go with your gut, and you're never gonna find something you love unless you try. And my only, now, I'm 60 now. I guess I started this in 2017, so that I would have been 55 when I started. And I'm going to race now against time, because I'm not young anymore, and I'm going to do as much good as I can before I'm either dead or senile. So,
I love that.
And I love it, and I'm having a blast. I've realized that, and I never felt like this before, but lawyers can really do good for society.
Right. I think there are just too many TV shows, right, about lawyers in fancy apartment buildings and doing fancy stuff. So you have this sort of idea of people paid an awful lot of money to do a lot of making the rich people richer and that sort of thing. And that isn't what justice is all about. Most people who in their heart, apart from, as you say, if you're going for the status and the money, you become a lawyer because it's well paid. Yes, you have to study very hard for it, but still. But to actually go for the main principle, which is justice, which is what is right, what is fair. Okay, so first tip, follow your gut. What other one do you have?
Just, find like-minded people. The internet's pretty cool because meet up, and there's so many different things that we never had before, and there's so many different communities that you can jump into and kind of experiment and meet the people, find out if they're happy. I didn't have the benefit of doing this because hardly anyone does prison cases, but one thing I want to give a shout out to the Trial Lawyers College, which I also attended at 60, and those are some people call them the hippie lawyers, and I'm proud to call myself a hippie lawyer. But it changed my whole view on the practice of law, and it couldn't have come at a better time because of all these cases. I finally met lawyers that I truly love, like that I would actually hang out with, and and I do. I started a nonprofit to start doing this nationally, and and 3 of the people from the Trial Lawyers College are going to be on the board, and
fantastic.
And they're all do-gooders like me, and they want to make money. Obviously, you can't do this if you don't make money. You go out of business because it's not cheap doing what we do. And but I found they call it a tribe, and I found my tribe. So I guess
that's a crucial tip, because I also think that lots of people go against that. You say you are a well-earning lawyer in your corporate fancy whatsoever, but that in your gut that something is wrong, the chances are big that your environment will actually try and stop you, that they'll actually say, are you mad? You've got something good going. So what you say about like-minded is often, sometimes, or mostly, let's say, with the best of intentions, our environment actually keeps us away from following our gut. And they think that we're going to regret it. And you've got to think about security and pension and money and all of that. Whereas, none of that actually makes us happy. It's following our gut and doing what we know we're here for, which does make people happy. So I think that's a very good tip too. So follow your gut, like-minded people. I think you had a third one, didn't you?
Well, I would say for those people that they're in jobs and they want to find something else, one thing that we've learned is the gig economy. People can, and it's a lot, unfortunately, a lot of times it's poor people, juggling multiple jobs just to keep their house and keep the kids fed. But, why can't people with wealth, that are in a job and stable, take on another gig?
Exactly.
Make some time to do something you love, and then if it makes sense.
I actually see quite a lot of that in my environment, people who are working for like ministries and stuff like that, but on the side already 10 years ago started training in something else and start off as a little practice in the evenings, but who feel that that's where their heart is, and who little by little build their clientele and get their money, sorted out in a way to keep them rolling afterwards, and end up having a much happier work life after 50 than they did before. Now, I mean, those are fantastic tips, Parrish. Now, regarding your association, what is it that you need? Is it you need funds, you need awareness? How could even my audience out there help you in your mission?
Well, the nonprofit is going to need funding. At a certain point, it's going to become self-funding, because what it's going to do is basically co-counsel with our firm, for one. I want to put like 10 or 15 cases in there immediately, just to get it going and get some money coming in through fees, once we win the cases. But so at some point it becomes self-funding, but even I have pretty big dreams for it. But in the beginning, we're going to need some funding. And I'll tell you, it's called Prison Lights. And
Prison Lights.
And it's basically, shining a light on prisons. And I'm kind of calling it, illumination through litigation. And
illumination through litigation. That's good.
Yeah. So anyway, it's, that's what I want to do. And the page should be up soon. We're using a fiscal agent, because I don't know if anyone over there watched Field of Dreams, the Kevin Costner movie where he builds the baseball field, and his thing is build it and they will come. And then all these baseball ghosts from the past show up, play a game. And anyway, so I've been thinking about this nonprofit for a couple of years, and finally I'm going to do it. I put in an application with a really great fiscal agent who takes care of all the 501c3 stuff, so I don't have to. Anyway, they're amazing. And then they connected me with an amazing lawyer that does foundations and nonprofits. And so all that's going. It was officially up this week, I guess. And
okay, so we can put a reference to that maybe in the show notes, just so that people know how to get hold of you.
Yeah, and what I can do is send you a link to the page on our website of a lot of the cases we filed. I've kind of fallen behind on putting the cases up there because I'm just so busy, and it's just insanely busy. I'll send you that link, and that'll show you some of the cases that we filed. And if you want to read the actual lawsuits, what's called the complaint, You can go read them, and it's terrific. And we put a lot of detail in because the public needs to know
Yeah, it's the
what's
reality. There's
happening.
no point
Yeah,
decorating it with a
yeah,
flower, is it?
right.
No.
Yeah. So, and and I'm pretty blunt. Maybe too blunt. That another thing my wife's pointed out a number of times.
Your wife
As
seems to
as
have
ha-
wonderful effect on you, right? Very good.
as have others. She's my. I'd be a mess if I didn't have her.
Well, I bet you're a great combination, both of you, because I mean, you have the
Oh,
fire, the ideas, the creativity, the can do. And I mean, that's right. We all need to have that. And I think that's the best in all good relationships. Parrish, I
yeah.
thank you very much. I was absolutely thrilled that you came my way via somebody else that I'd interviewed. So thank you. Thank you for sharing with us your passion and this mission that you're on. Thank you for sharing also for some of us the hope that we will still, find our burning fire like you've got and create this foundation, this NGO that you're creating, Prison Lights and Illuminating Through Litigation. I found it's extremely good. And thank you for people like you, right, who do step up, follow their gut, but step up and actually make it happen. So thank you for sharing all of that with us today. I wish you all the very best with your mission. Do come back and let us know how it's going. And for the rest of you out there, be inspired to step up, to, open up maybe to possibilities instead of listening all the time to no, can't do. And maybe indeed exactly what Parrish says, start it on the side and then see where the balance strikes between status and money and literally following your destiny and leaving a legacy behind. So for all those people that you're helping out there, Parrish, thank you very much. And the rest of you, speak to you this time next week.
Thank you.